All right, we have another episode of the WP Crowd. Welcome. We are talking about mental health today. A good topic that a lot of developers talk about, and mental health in general. I think something that we kind of overlook and uh, take second seat to physical health, but mental health is super important, especially in our own industry, where a lot of people don't have kind of that normal schedule, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. So let me just start with introductions. I'm going to start with my left, and that is Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl Alexander. I write on carlalexander.ca. I've been a developer for a long, long time. I've been self-employed, or not even self-employed, but I've been on my own for 4 years. So yeah, I've had a good amount of experience with this topic.
Awesome. I think next person is a first-time WP Crowd podcaster, although he has been a friend of the WP Crowd for since its inception. Lucas.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I've been doing website design development for the last 6 years or so, and during that time balancing it out with school. So I can kind of provide that perspective of having a day job of sorts while also doing this gig kind of in the spare time around school. And I'm now out of school, so now I have the experience of working this job more or less full-time and can kind of talk from that perspective as well.
Yeah, actually a fair point that we could talk about, which is mental health when you're kind of juggling your kind of day job and consulting work. Definitely something I deal with. All right, cool. Next up is a twofer for the next one. We have Megan and Chris. Why don't you guys just both introduce yourselves?
Can we do it at the exact same time, too? So you can just try to figure it out over top of it? My name's Megan Haynes. I've been designing, developing websites and WordPress stuff for over 15 years at this point, so doing that kind of juggle and finding that balance is something I'm pretty familiar with at this point, so I'm glad to be here.
And I'm Chris Ross. I've been independently consulting for about 25 years with the occasional break, but so an awful lot of time is spent trying to figure this one out.
Awesome. Just noticed that the first three kind of screens here, or the first four people, are all Canadian. So now that we're done with the Canadians, Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Strump. I'm in Missouri. I work remote. I do freelance work full-time. I also do part-time support work for WordPress on the West Coast. So, and I've done freelance working on my own for about 5 years, 6 years now. And I've gone through the roller coaster. I've watched my health tank and gain a lot of weight. Like, had the doctor tell me, hey, you need to take a look at these numbers are starting to climb up a little more than they need, than they should be, and they really had to face that, and this year it's been a turnaround. So I can say that I've pushed myself really hard, but then also figured out, hey, here's what I'm doing now, and it's working. But I could say that looking back, I can definitely say, don't do these things, or when this starts to happen, you need to take action.
Awesome. And yeah, you've been looking a lot better there, Steve. I've noticed been improving.
Thanks.
You seem generally happier than some of the other times we've talked. And finally, Teresa.
I have been a graphic designer for over 45 years, much of that working on my own. At one point, my now ex was even working for me. I've been doing websites for about 12 years. I've been doing WordPress sites for 6 years. I work at home for a variety of reasons. And ironically, part of the working at home helps my mental health instead of working for an employer who has their own crazy expectations.
I agree. I find that there's a good mix there. I mean, for those who don't know, I'm Roy. I work. I'm a WordPress developer at Disney, so I do have a full-time job. Oh, we lost Teresa. I do have a full-time job, and I mix it with a little bit of consulting or I just do a lot of side projects as well, like for fun. But yeah, there's definitely a notion of working from home can definitely helps me out. So like, uh, even if it's only 1 or 2 days a week, that notion of being able to work from home is definitely a big sanity saver on my end. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and just we're gonna try to do this a little bit differently today. I'm not going to be more of a panel host. I want to just have a discussion here with the people who are on today. But I'm going to pose the first question, and I'm going to send it directly to Steve, and hopefully that'll start the conversation. But my first question, which hopefully will start things out, is you know, the first step in any kind of like rehabilitation and or anything really is to notice when you have a problem, or to accept the fact that you have a problem. So maybe we can first look at that. Like, how do you know you are having a mental kind of health episode? Whether you want to call it a break or whatever you want to define it as. How do you know something is not right with your mental health? And then how do you identify that's going on?
It's going to be different for everybody. I think panic attacks are actually really good, or like maybe a lack of sleep, or maybe having anxiety and up to a panic attack. Those kinds of things are definitely alarms, right? So not eating. I know a lot of people might start skipping meals, and that adds up. You start to that can affect your blood sugar. People get hangry, as they put it. So, yeah.
Does anyone else have any signs that they kind of have noticed either in themselves or other people?
I started procrastinating a lot. I spent an entire month watching TV shows once without doing any work.
I've been there too.
Any work. And it's kind of a vicious cycle too. Like, the longer you do it, the harder it feels that you've been a failure at doing it, at taking charge of your own life. Like, this is, for me, it was even more complicated because I didn't have client work, so I was my own boss. So I was just basically slacking off as a boss too, and it was really, really hard.
I think as well.
I find it.
Somebody pick up.
I think as well, other than just the over or under eating, there's also the overeating situation as well. But it becomes a food issue. It becomes. I find that I go through periods where I haven't responded to messages from other people, whether it's work or personal, when I've spent too much time alone. And I think that's a warning sign for me. If I haven't checked in with people, I'm sort of losing contact with the outside world.
I deal with, I know that.
Go, Teresa, go.
I find that if I find myself getting really angry at a lot of things, if I find myself using profanity a lot, which is not me at all, and I just start using profanity. If I am craving sugar, sugar is my drug of choice, and I know that I'm having issues, so I've taken some steps to try to help with the mental, and we'll go into that, I'm sure, but I've taken some steps to help with my own mental well-being.
And I think something for me, sorry. I think something that I've kind of experienced difficulty with sometimes is getting to that point where you have motivation, especially when you work from home. And that can be a big sign of just something's wrong, something's up. I know in my case, where I've had the situation where I had school full time, and people that have worked full time and do kind of freelance work on the side might identify with this, is that when you have something like school or work where you're expected to go and you can just kind of go through the motions during a day, it's a whole lot easier to at least have some semblance of I'm accomplishing things, or at least things are okay. But when you're at home and you have to push yourself to go through those motions. It can be a whole lot more difficult to find that motivation, to find that kind of that reason to be working. And I find, when I'm suffering through periods of lack of motivation at home, that's when I know that something's up, and that I need to be doing something to kind of correct my course, in a sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense because I mean, if I find that when you're at home, you have to kind of structure yourself. So if that structure kind of starts falling apart, everything else starts falling apart with it. So I find you have to catch yourself early, otherwise you start a vicious cycle, and that's really when the longer it goes on, the harder it is to pick yourself back up after.
Yeah, this last couple of weeks, I've actually said I'm going to work 9 to 5. And I just kind of made that up, right? Like, I could work any times, really. But it's been working out. And that's hard to do, though, if you have more than 8 hours worth of work to do in a day. So I'm in a position right now where I can't actually say at 5 o'clock I'm done for the night. So if you can set a schedule, even if you don't have to, it's good. It's nice to have that structure.
It's funny you say that. I find that as well, where I'll often sit down on the first couple of hours on a Friday morning, and I'll map out all of my work for the week so that I put them into little 2-hour chunks the following week, but then I can mix in business meetings and client work, and even to the point of just going out and exercising, but knowing that I have these almost bite-sized doable pieces throughout the week, rather than always just feeling like I'm overwhelmed and I've got 60 hours that needs to be done randomly. It really puts it together for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic that being freelancers, we can make our schedule whatever we want, but with that, we need to have a schedule at the same time. If you just kind of freewheel it and just work when you feel like it, you'll learn to never feel like working. So some amount of schedule is really healthy for keeping good balance.
Or you don't know when to stop working, which is hard too when you're on a good roll. Go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, one of the things that's real important besides exercise, oh my gosh, exercise is so important, and trying to do some exercise every day, but also find some hobbies that are completely unrelated to the work that we do. Something like, for me, it's gardening, it's quilting, it's crocheting, it's painting, something that's not coding. And my garden especially, I call it my happy place. It's just a peaceful place that the most it probably requires of me is to water.
I think that's hard to strike a balance. I still haven't figured out work-life balance. Like, if I'm at home, I feel I should be working, which is like not healthy at all. Like, I work air quotes 7 days a week. Like, if I'm home, I feel I should be working. So it's killed kind of my gaming habits, and even TV. Like, I have to be careful with TV. I don't want to watch too much TV or fall back in a cycle of watching a ton of television and not working. So I have to be careful about that too. So that put a lot of pressure on getting out of the house.
It's hard when you're kind of working full time too, because a lot of the notions of full-time worker like myself is, all right, 5 o'clock is here, done for the day or whatever. I've done my 8 hours. I go home and that's it. My computer is off, and I'm like, I don't understand that concept. Like, people that do that, I'm just like, I don't get it. How do you just stop working? I don't understand that at all. And so when I come home, and maybe this is an issue, talking point that Teresa said, you should have a hobby. And my biggest problem in life is that my hobby is code. So when I come home, maybe I'm not working, like I'm not making anything, I'm not doing anything that's making me money, but I want to spend the next 5 hours coding something really random and something that I think is cool, even if I make no money off of it and I just throw it up there for free, I'll spend like months building something just for fun, and I'm not sure that helps with my mental health overall. I mean, it is, let's say, fun code versus work code, but yeah, I'm like constantly in front of my computer. My wife hates it because I'm always, quote unquote, working on something.
And I think too, the nature of our work, that almost everything we do, you do it with a computer. When any hobby or downtime you have, if you choose one that or interested in one that's associated with a computer, you're on that computer and you naturally feel like, oh well, I should be working. It's so easy for me to be working. Like I work with the same laptop that I do any personal stuff on, so there's no divide there for me between personal and work. And I think, Carl, what you were talking about with the idea that when you come home, you feel like that's the space where you should be working. I think sense of space has a very interesting relationship to work too, because my bedroom is both the place I sleep and the place I work. So I spend almost all my time in there if I'm not out working someplace else. So it's very difficult for me to be in that space and not have the urge to be working and not have that desire to be doing work, because as Carl said, that space is so strongly associated with work. So kind of tying in Teresa's point about having a hobby, I think something that's really important, and something that I obviously am currently failing at but hope to eventually improve on, is to have a space dedicated to work in your house. And a space dedicated to not work. Hopefully the space dedicated to work is the minority, and the rest of the house is dedicated to not work. But you have to have some division between those kind of modes, or else you're gonna constantly feel that inclination to be working and that desire and that drive.
Well, for
when
me,
I moved to the apartment that I'm in.
Go.
Teresa, are you going to continue?
Okay. When I moved to the apartment that I'm in, now before I used to have my office in my bedroom also. When I moved to the apartment that I'm in, I was pretty excited because even though the bedroom was big enough for me to put an office into, I had the means to set up my office in the living room. And what was even cooler is I took my couch and I created a space between the working area and like my TV area. So this is my office. And so it's important for me to have that separation of workspaces, but I think, and I think research bears it out, it's also important to have a separation of the kinds of things that you do. That, like you've got the computer, and then you have maybe something that is totally not related to the computer at all. It helps your brain to cope with things better, and actually makes you more creative and possibly even harder working.
I would agree with that, Teresa. One of the things that I've had to do over the last year and a half was shift to some hobbies that were very non-technical. And I found, since getting back into ceramics and set building and working with my hands, like physically hammering things, I'm able to go back to that relaxation that I feel when I'm sailing and shut down my technology computery feeling, as opposed to photography projects. For every hour I spend holding a camera in my hand, I spend another hour or two staring at a computer screen, photo editing. So that's not really a break from my job. It's just a break from, am I cleaning up pixels for a client or cleaning up pixels for myself? But really, that holding a hammer is, I can go whole days now without thinking about my laptop, and that's a wonderful break from the stresses of everything else we do.
For me personally, I don't think work. I mean, I hear this advice all the time. I know a lot of people have done it, but I think for me, it has always come down to fear of devolving again into this negative pattern of overdoing something. So I love video games, and it doesn't take me much to go back to video games or watching TVs. So really, the problem is the fear of overdoing it, of failing at managing yourself. And so far, the only way I've managed to kind of successfully navigate those waters is to really almost kill off those hobbies that I find really fun and addictive, and just force myself to just step out of the house, because obviously that's where I have the association with work. So as long as I'm social and just do other things outside the house, I go training 4 times a week. I take Spanish classes. That helps me manage that, but I still would like to be able to do stuff at home, and that's still something I'm working on.
Do you think, open question, do you think social life is important for mental health, especially, and I kind of take it as we are developers, those of us that are developers, and there's a kind of a natural trait for developers who are computer geeks and kind of introverts, right, to kind of devolve into these consultants, because it works out well for us. We are introverts, we don't like talking to people, we don't like human beings, so hey, I found a job that allows me to stay at home, do what I love, which is work on the computer, and make a good living off of it. Do you think that people should be forcing themselves to have a social life or some type of social interaction outside of work or outside of their house to help with their mental health state, whatever?
I think it depends. Like you pointed it out a bit. I'm on the extreme side of extrovert, so for me, it's definitely very important to step out. But if you're more of an introvert, it's more tricky, because being outside, being social, is a bit of a draining, negative experience sometimes. So it's really hard to manage that. But in the same way, maybe for those, I'm not an introvert, so maybe somebody who's an introvert can speak a bit more about that, but maybe being at work is as draining as this social aspect, but I definitely miss the kind of water cooler moments of work, being alone at home. That's something that if you're an extrovert, you'll notice pretty quickly.
One of the things that I started to do about a year ago that was very, very helpful is I started taking my weekends back. And the weekends, if at all humanly possible, sometimes you don't have a choice, but if it's humanly possible, I don't work on the weekends. That's when I'm going to spend time with my grandkids, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to do my other projects and everything, and it's guilt-free time for me. And that way I can work during the week and even work later and really look forward to the weekend when I can do something completely unrelated to my work. The one exception I might make is like reading my RSS feeds on my iPad while I watch TV, on the weekend. So, but for the weekends, that's kind of become my mental health time.
I want to pose one more question before we wrap up here. I know we talked about this, Carl mentioned it a couple times. When you're kind of in that mental health state of, something's going on, you're kind of in this devolving kind of cycle, whether you're binge watching something on Netflix or you find yourself out at the pub, too much, whatever you are for coping, you are doing it and you're realizing now you're in this spiral and it's hard to get out of. So my question is, what are some traits or what are some things you can do to help get out of that? Carl's kind of mentioned, he kind of just took video games out of the equation in his life. So, that's kind of the hard knock approach of ripping off the cold turkey Band-Aid. But what are some other things you can do?
Roy, I would say that having struggled with this off and on for 2 decades, I think the best thing somebody can do is take the time and see a mental health specialist. And I know none of us want to go see a therapist. It feels weird to do that. But when my car's making a funny sound, I bring it to a mechanic. That mechanic is trained in how to fix a car. And, for me, I struggled for years with not knowing what was wrong, but knowing that I was unhappy. And so I went and I sat and I talked to a person who had heard what I was saying thousands of times in his career. And within a couple of hours of sitting and talking to him, I found out that everything I was going through was things that people have been going through for literally as long as we've been paying attention to this. And he course corrected me probably faster than I could ever have hoped for on my own.
In a similar vein, I think one of the best things that you can do when you start seeing yourself in that position is reach out. Reach out to friends, reach out to coworkers and colleagues, and you will really quickly learn that you are not the only person dealing with this. You're not the first person feeling that anxiety. Carl telling how he binge watched TV for a month, man, I've done that too. I never thought Carl would do that, and here we are, we're in the exact same situation.
I watched all of Breaking Bad from beginning to end in like 4 days.
I did Game of Thrones, 5 seasons.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say very quickly is as people in the community, we're often aware of our I'll call them friends, but associates as well across the spectrum. And quite often, with social media, if I see a friend suddenly drop off the radar or their posts become rather peculiar, even if I'm not terribly close to them, I'll just reach out with a common support question and find out whether they're in a good place or not, because as people who work alone from home, we often find ourselves frustrated and flustered, and all it takes is somebody to answer a question or keep you from feeling like you're drowning.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, I didn't seek help, but I found that for me, just trying to find small victories and kind of building up on those small victories to get larger and larger victories is kind of how I climbed out of that hole. But I mean, your mileage at that point, your mileage will vary. Like I'm a very kind of do-it-yourself kind of personality, so it was important for me that I solve it on my own, that I figured it out on my own, what was causing this problem or these problems, and it was just important that I figure it out. And the small victories definitely helped, because just going to the gym I find is super important for me, because every day I deal with the pressures of hitting another PR, of doing as good as I did before, and when I do, I feel good, and I can carry that little victory throughout the day. But if it can work both ways too. If you fail, then you feel miserable for the rest of the day, so you have to be careful. But yeah, that helped me a lot too.
Back to what Chris was saying, you said that you don't necessarily want to go see a therapist or whatever. I don't think it has the stigma that it used to anymore. I think, it used to be this thing like in the, 50s and onwards that was like, oh my God, you must be crazy. But, a lot of people that I know that I respect, that you would never assume go see a therapist on the regular, go see therapists. And it's like, it's that thing where it's just like, sometimes it's someone to just talk to get stuff off your chest that you can't talk to somebody else. Sometimes it's whatever your case may be and whatever you find helpful in a therapist. I don't think there's a stigma anymore. So I'd definitely say if you're at that point, do it. And yeah, I mean they're the mechanic for your mental health, so they're the best person to go to. As well as reach out to the community. I've got some great friends with the WP crowd, as well as a lot of other friends within my personal WordPress community and outside of the WordPress community. So anytime I'm having issues, I I tend to be that kind of person that just reaches out right away before anything kind of starts to develop, and that's always helped me. It's always been like, all right, people understand what I'm going through. That's awesome.
And I think building on that and what Megan said earlier about, just reach out to anybody. I think something that is really important too is if you can, and if it works for you, is have a community of people outside of your development circles. Have a community of people maybe tied to some of the hobbies you do to get away from work, because that community of people, well, it is still very important to, if you are experiencing mental health problems, to see a mental health professional. I think there's no denying that they're the best equipped to handle this stuff. Having a community of people around you that you can turn to help you out, and through a hobby or something like that, and maybe it's not even they're helping you out directly, but it just gets your mind off everything else going on in your life right then, through common activity, that can be really valuable as well. And I think looking for those things in your lives and those support structures and knowing them ahead of time too, that can be really valuable, so that if it ends up coming to a point where you're experiencing some problems, you know who to turn to and you know where to go for help.
Like, we are social creatures at the end of the day. Humans, that's what we do. So to be in a situation where we put ourselves in isolation with our freelance, the solution is to get back and be social, get out and reconnect. Even if you're an introvert or extrovert, you still need that connection at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I had
and it's not like when I do meet up with WordPress people like Carl or anyone else that we just sit there talking about code all day either. Like, yeah, we probably spend a little bit of time getting yelled at by Carl for our code, but that's only a small portion. Like, most of the time we're talking about other things. Sometimes we have deep conversations. Sometimes they're more shallow. Like, whatever it is we're talking about, majority of the time that I'm with WordPress people, unless it's like that first conversation or it's just that relationship you have with said person, most of my closer friends, even in the WordPress circle or development circles, we're not sitting there talking about code the whole time. Like, we'll blab about it for a little bit, but then it ultimately goes into something else, or we're talking about some other aspect of our life. Teresa, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, the last couple of therapists I had for a couple of different reasons were a real nightmare for me. And so I had decided to just like go it alone. But I've got stuff going on now, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to check out somebody new that I could go see, because it's so important for your mental health. Hopefully you can find a good one who doesn't just sit there and listen to you, but also gives you feedback, and you can get some different perspective from someone. And a lot of it may just be them listening to you, again, giving you feedback, and maybe you're kind of sort of curing your own self, but it's nice to have a professional to guide the process.
Yeah. So we've done one other episode about this in the past. We focused more on mental health conversation on burnout, but I want to end this this episode just like I did that episode, which is definitely reach out when you are in that state of mind, whether you're either spiraling or you're kind of getting there, whatever state you're in. If you notice that something is kind of amiss with your mental health, reach out to either the community. If you don't have a community that you're a part of, even like family or whatever, whoever you feel comfortable going to. Let's just say that, because sometimes family isn't the person you feel comfortable talking to. Find a community that you feel comfortable, vent out to them, even if it's just to blow off some steam. That'll definitely help. And if you don't have any of those, maybe go see a therapist. And there's many resources out there, both in Canada and in the U.S. for mental health, getting help, just talking to somebody. So yeah, just want to end the episode with that. And if you want to talk to us, feel free to comment below the video or on our YouTube channel. Most of us have gone through whatever it is you're going through. we have a wide spectrum of developers, consultants here, full-time workers. So understand that we've been through quite a bit. And yeah, we're happy to always reach out to us, and we'll have a chat. So that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're now on iTunes and Google Play for audio, so feel free to subscribe there as well. Thank you very much. See you guys next week.